Gasparino, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Hello, Chris.
Temperature on the Josh McDaniel hire. Ownership influence, if you want to go there, but just overall feelings on that hire as it stands today.
Yeah, I feel some ambivalence about this because on the one hand, I have a lot of respect for Josh. I've always enjoyed covering him. Think he's a really good offensive coordinator, but that clip you played with Phil Perry sort of hit on it a little bit. The issue would be, was this a preordained hire that's coming from somewhere other than Mike Vrabel? And I have a problem with that because already you have a situation where it's an arranged marriage. They're foisting Elliot Wolf on Mike Vrabel, and it feels a little bit like they are setting up a situation where they foisted Josh McDaniels on Mike Vrabel. And I just don't think that's good. I don't think that's good overall if Mike Vrabel's the coach and you want him to execute his vision. I agree with Phil. I think if Vrabel's going somewhere else, I don't think Josh McDaniels is his offensive coordinator. And I know you guys saw today, Bobby Slowick got fired in Houston. I happen to think he's a pretty good offensive coordinator. If you had waited a little bit longer, I mean, is that a name you would have wanted to talk to? Because I feel like his style of offense sort of suits what Vrabel wants to do and has done in the past offensively, potentially better than McDaniels. You know, on the other hand, Josh is tremendously flexible and adaptable. He's close with Sean McVay. So if you want to run that style of offense or more of a West Coast-based offense, which is what they ran last year, I have confidence he can do this. This is not Matt Patricia or Joe Judge, and you're asking them to do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, who's making the decision on what kind of offense they run? Once you install Josh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, finish.
No, once you install Josh in there, based on, I think, the autonomy he's had in the past and the fact he's been a head coach twice, why wouldn't he look at it and say, well, I'm head coach offense, we'll run the offense I think is best and go from there? Why would it be Vrabel, dictating to him in his mind?
Why do you think the Crafts are so enamored by Josh McDaniels?
It's a great question. I mean, he certainly has done great work for them, and he's a bright guy. There's no question about that, and he's creative offensively. He's somebody who in the past has had a good relationship, obviously, with Tom Brady, so maybe they look at that and say, well, if Tom respects him and Tom had some success. To be honest, I don't know. I'm just sort of, guessing here, but they obviously pulled him off the plane when he was ready to go to Indy. They felt it was important that he stayed, and they gave him a contract that made him, at that time, the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. So they have a particular affinity for Josh McDaniels. There's no question about that.
What offense do you think he's going to run?
I don't know, and that's my biggest concern is that I don't know what offense he's going to run. It could be an amalgam of a couple of different things, but do I think it ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be closer to the Patriots offense that we saw when he was here before than what they ran last year? I do, and that concerns me a little bit. I thought this was maybe an opportunity as you went through this search to try and have, and it's not about Drake May. It is about Drake May, and it isn't. In other words, I think Josh is more than talented enough as an offensive coordinator to put the quarterback in a position to succeed. My concern is the other skill position guys, particularly the wide receivers, because some of these other styles of offense, I think it's just easier to integrate guys and have them acclimate from college football than what the Patriots were doing during their heyday and what the Patriots were doing when Josh was here. And that's not to say that all those receivers flamed out because of how difficult the offense was or because of Josh. Some of those guys were bad picks. It just couldn't play. But if you're looking for immediate production from young players, which I think is something they're looking for this year, if you go back to a more complicated style of offense with sight adjustment routes and things that are less dictated and clarified than some other styles of offense for the other skill position players, I think that's challenging.
Chris, what kind of offense do you think Vrabel wants to run?
Something that's more West Coast based. I wouldn't say it's totally West Coast, but the time he spent with Stefanski last year in Cleveland, having Matt LaFleur as an offensive coordinator, even if they didn't have the greatest relationship of all time. If you look at that's the amazing thing I think about Vrabel is as much time as he spent in New England as a player and then coaching for Bill O'Brien in Houston, when he became a head coach, he didn't run that style of offense. That's not what they ran in his time in Tennessee. So I think he wants something that's maybe a little simpler. And he said at his introductory press conference, we're not going to ask these guys to do things they can't do. We're not going to overload them. there's the potential in the old Patriots offense to potentially do that.
Let's grab a call, too. I promise this with Chris. How about Mike in Connecticut? Go, Mike, on this.
Hey, Felger, for two things, but first is flesh it out, not flush it out. You're not flushing a toilet, you're fleshing out details. It's a metaphor for adding skin to a skeleton. And also, who before this Houston coordinator got released, what were the other options besides Josh? Who would you have wanted to see? Thanks.
Sure. I mean, listen, I say this a million times. It's not my job to tell you who to hire. It's my job to second guess after the fact. So whoever it was, I'd tell you after the fact. That's the benefit of sitting in this seat. But, you know, there's the quarterback coach in Minnesota who worked with Sam Darnold this year. Is it Rangone?
Yeah, Udinsky?
Oh, no, Udinsky. I'm sorry.
And then Udinsky.
And then Rangone was a quarterback coach in L.A., right?
Yeah, Dave Ragone would have been somebody. Nick Caley you could have spoken to. George Godsey has ties here. He was with Todd Monken and that offense in Baltimore, which obviously that's an interesting offense in terms of what they do with Lamar Jackson, but also how much it features the run and how much it features tight ends. Those are things Vrabel's liked in the past. So I think that there were some other people out there that you could have spoken with. I mean, again, that's the other thing, too. You might have landed in the right place. Josh is a fantastic coach, but it's another search where you look at it and say, oh, you predetermined where you were going, and it happens to be somebody you know.
Chris, what about
how many searchers are you going to run like that?
What about the guy in Cleveland, Tommy Rees?
Yeah, I think, just my opinion, that would have been Vrabel's first choice, but then he got promoted to offensive coordinator in Cleveland, and that was the end of that.
So tie this in with Elliot Wolf still being here and whether he's going to be just turning off the lights, like I say, or more than that, as you believe.
It's going to be more than that.
Okay, he is still here.
At least that's the plan. Mike could stuff him in a metaphorical locker if he doesn't like him at some point. But right now, that is the plan.
Tie it together. The McDaniels, hire, search, and the Wolf thing. And what does that leave you with Mike Vrabel taking this job?
It leads me to believe that it's more what I'm afraid, I should say, not what I believe, what I'm afraid, because I don't know. What I'm afraid of is that it's essentially them saying, we didn't have the wrong approach or the wrong model last year. We had the wrong people. And so if we swap, it's sort of what I said to you before when we went into last year and I said, there's a thought. I feel like there's a thought in the organization of, well, this was the fault of Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. If we swap out the coach and quarterback, we're golden, which is in part why they brought back so many guys from a 4-13 team. And now I look at this and I wonder if they say, okay, you know what the problem was? It was the play calling on offense with the offensive coordinator who didn't really have a ton of play calling experience, and it was the inexperienced coach. So now if we just bring in experienced people that we know, their experience, then this whole model that we're going for, collaboration, this whole thing, it's all going to work. And having more input and more sway coming from above football operations, that's going to work out here. And that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want to go back. It's tough because it's a little bit of threading the needle, right? You can criticize the organization on both sides. I don't think they want to go back, and I personally don't want to go back to the way it was at the end with Belichick, where basically people are afraid to challenge him. He has complete power, and there's really no checks and balances. But on the other hand, if it's so collaborative that it gets muddied, and you bring in a coach who's an experienced coach and you don't let them execute what their vision is for the football team, well, that's not good either. And that's not going to work. So my issue here, my concern is that they are foisting key elements of the organization, de facto GM, offensive coordinator, on Mike Vrabel and foisting choices on him that he wouldn't really be making if it were just up to him.
So I've been saying it a different way. I've been saying if they're just inserting Mike Vrabel into their bull crap, it ain't going to work either.
Yeah, that's probably better.
I mean, so the issue, there's a lot of issues, but the roster is first. Number one is the roster. And if they don't acknowledge it, then it doesn't matter what May will help, obviously, and Vrabel will help, obviously. But if they don't invest in the roster and improve the roster, it's ultimately not going to change. So I think we're in agreement on that.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.